नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So today we are going to be covering a set of 3 verses from Canto 3, Chapter 31. That is 3.31.10, 11 and 12. So I'll recite the verse and the translation for 10 and 11, and then we will discuss the purpose in the class, and we will recite 12. So text number 10. Arabhya saptaman masal labdha bodhopi vepitaha naikatraste sutivater vishta bhuriva sodharaha. The translation. Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed downward by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery, like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal cavity. He cannot remain in one place. Text 11. नातमान ऋषिर्भीतः सप्तभद्रीकृताञ्जलिः स्तुविता तं विक्लवया वाचा येनोदरेऽर्पितः. The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. Text number 12. Jantur uvacha. Please repeat. Jantur uvacha. Tasyopasannam avitum jagadichayatha. Tasyopasannam avitum jagadichayatha. Nanatanor-bhuvi chalat-charanarvindam. Nanatanor-bhuvi chalat-charanarvindam. Soham vrajami sharanam yakuto bhayam me. Soham vrajami sharanam yakuto bhayam me. Yene drashi gatiradasya satonurupa. Yene drishi gatirasa adashya satonurupa.
Yene drishi gatirasya satonurupa.
Please repeat.
Chanturvacha
Tasyopasannam avitum jagadichayata. Nanatanorbhuvichalat-charanarvindam. Soham vrajami sharanam yakuto bhayam me. Yene drishi gatiradashya satonurupa.
Chanturvacha tasyopasannam avitum jagadichayata. Tasyopasannam avitum jagadichayata.
Nanatanorbhuvichalat-charanarvindam.
Soham vrajami sharanam hyakuto bhayam me.
Soham vrajami sharanam yakuto bhayam me.
Yene drishi gatiradashya satonurupa.
Yene drishi gatiradashya satonurupa. Chanturuvacha tasyopasannam avitum jagadichayata. Nanatanorbhuvichalat-charanarvindam. Soham vrajami sharanam yakuto bhayam me. Yene drishi gatiradashya satonurupa. Let's look at the word-to-word meaning. Jantu uvacha. The human soul says. Tasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Upasannam, having approached for protection. Avitum, to protect. Jagat, the universe. Ichchaya, by his own will. Atananatano, who accepts various forms. Bhuvi, on the earth. Chalat, walking. Charanarvindam, the lotus feet. Saha aham, I myself. Brajami, go. Sharanam, unto the shelter. He, indeed. Akuta bhayam, giving relief from all fear. Me, for me. Yena, by whom. Idrishi, such. Gatihi, condition of life. Adharshi, was considered. Asataha, impious. Anurupa, befitting. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. Purport. The word Chalacharanaravindam refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who actually walks or travels upon the surface of the world. For example, Lord Ramachandra actually walked on the surface of the world, and Lord Krishna also walked just like an ordinary man. The prayer is therefore offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who descends to the surface of this earth or any part of this universe for the protection of the pious and the destruction of the impious. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that when there is an increase of irreligion and discrepancies arise in the real religious activities, the Supreme Lord comes to protect the pious and kill the impious. This verse indicates Lord Krishna. Another significant point in this verse is that the Lord comes Ichchaya, by his own will. As Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavami Atma Mayaya, I appear at my will by my internal potential power. He is not forced to come by the laws of material nature. It is stated here, Ichchaya. He does not assume any form as the impersonalists think, because he comes at his own will, and the form in which he descends is his eternal form. As the Supreme Lord puts the living entity into the condition of horrible existence, he can also deliver him, and therefore one should seek shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna demands, give up everything and surrender unto me. And it is also said in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who approaches him does not come back again to accept a form in material existence, but goes back to Godhead, back home, never to return. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Let's do Mangala children. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bhuter Mahatbir Yayima Puro Vibhu Nirmayashete Yadamosha Purusha भुङ्क्तेर्गुणांशो दश षोडशात्मकः सोऽलङ्कृशिष्ट भगवान् वचांसि मे श्रीकृष्ण शरणं शरणागतं कथा अमृतं सततपीबतं भक्ति वेदान्त मार्गपङ्क्तनं सर्वलोकऋषिदेवजन प्रसन्नं सर्वलोकऋषिदेवजन प्रसन्नं. Hare Krishna. So welcome again to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we have been hearing from Kapila Muni about how the human soul, the living entity, is now within the womb of a mother. And the living entity is in a very, very difficult situation. So as we all know, the baby inside the womb of the mother is surrounded by so many things. And it is just caught up there. And in a very helpless situation, the baby in the womb starts offering beautiful prayers to Shri Krishna so that the child can come out of this frightful condition that he is put into. So if we rewind a little bit, we can see what is happening here. And also in text 10 and 11, let's try to see what Srila Prabhupada says. And then we will go into the beautiful prayers offered by the soul. So from the time when the baby is conceived within the womb of the mother, that is when the sperm meets the ovum in a woman's body, what happens? The embryo is formed, which is the first formation of the child. It begins with the embryo. And then within 3 months, all the bodily parts are formed. That is the hands, the legs, the eyes, the legs, the ears, nose, all these parts, they begin to develop. And then within 4 months of the formation, the 7 layers of material ingredients, they form a covering for the soul. So what are these 7 material ingredients? That is the chyle. So chyle is a milky kind of a fluid that helps in the immune system of the body, of the soul that is covered by all this. So we have the chyle, then the blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow and semen. So all these are the 7 ingredients that form a covering. And just within 5 months, the embryo has now slowly developed and the fetus, that is the very, primary stage of the baby. Now the baby starts experiencing hunger and thirst. So the baby feels hungry. Sometimes mothers, when they have a child in the womb and then they hear some sound and then they know, oh, maybe my baby is hungry inside, like that. Then within 6 months, the baby starts moving. So it just starts, sometimes mothers say, oh, I can feel a kick from the child, like that. So the baby starts moving and then it turns around a little bit. And then by the 7th month, the consciousness of the child is developed. So that is what is bringing us to our discussion today. So by the 7th month, the consciousness of the human soul is developed and the baby is now getting ready to come out of the womb of the mother. So we can imagine like the intense pressure that the baby is facing. So if we look at text 10, we can see, thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after conception, the child is tossed downward by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal activity, he cannot remain in one place. So here, what happens is, now within the body of the mother, in any living entity, it is said that there is Vayu. Vayu is the air element. We have water, there is fire, there is earth, there is wind, there is space. So Vayu. Now in yoga, when we study, we hear about the 5 main types of Vayu that is there in a body. So that is Prana Vayu, Apana Vayu, Samana Vayu, Vyana Vayu and Udana Vayu. So Prana Vayu is the main life-giving force, the air that we all breathe in. So Prana Vayu is the air that goes inwards into the body and it goes upwards and it nourishes and it governs like all that we intake, the food, air, our senses, our thoughts, all that we are trying to absorb. Then Apana Vayu is situated in the pelvic floor of the human body. And the Apana Vayu is the one that flows downwards. So the Apana Vayu governs all our actions that are, based in the abdominal region. So it is this Apana Vayu that is pushing the child now, so this air is pushing. So this air, it governs reproduction, and then after digestion, what happens, all that, the air that passes out. And then Samana Vayu is the balancing air, which moves from the periphery of the body to the center. Then Vyana Vayu is the air that moves outward. So from the center of the abdomen, it moves towards the periphery of the body. And Udana Vayu carries upward. So the air that goes from the heart to the head upwards. So when a woman is pregnant with a child and when the baby is just about to come out, this Apana Vayu begins to act rapidly. So we can imagine, let's think, there's a forceful wind coming on us. What will we feel? Sometimes even we get pushed away. So like that, the baby is being pushed by this Apana Vayu. And the child is in such a frightful condition. And here in the Purport, Srila Prabhupada says that not just the baby is coming out of the womb of the mother, but also in the intestines, we have the waste products that are accumulated, from the mom's digestion. And there may be so many microbial organisms and worms and all that. So even they are coming out from all that. So here, Srila Prabhupada is giving us a very beautiful point of compassion. So he says that, what to speak about all the living entities who are, whom we have to respect and be kind towards each other, but even to worms, because the worms here are referred to as Sodhara. So Sodhara means a brother or a sibling. In Tamil we have Sahodaran means brother, Sahodari means sister, like that. So here, the Sodara, born of the same mother, since the child is born from the womb of the mother, and the worms are also born of fermentation within the womb of the same mother, under the circumstances, the child and the worms are actually brothers. Now these points might be very hard for us to digest if we just looked at it from a mundane perspective. But when we accept it as this is what our Shastras are saying, and all this is scientific, and then when we take that humble mode, then we can begin to see that this is absolute truth. This is what I have to try and understand for me to grow on my spiritual path, for me to understand who is Shri Krishna. Even these points are very, very important. So here Srila Prabhupada says that we should be concerned about all living entities. So whether it's a worm or an insect or a cockroach or an elephant or a dog, anyone. So to everyone, we have to be kind. We have to think that they are also our fellow living entities. And Shri Krishna as the super soul is present within the heart of everyone. So in text 11 we see that the human soul that is covered by all these 7 layers of material ingredients, it prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. So now, in the purport, again, Srila Prabhupada explains that whenever, someone goes through any difficulties in their life, then they make a decision, after this, I don't want to go through this situation anymore. So just like when a woman is pregnant and when she goes through the difficult labor pains, she makes a decision that, I don't want to go through this pain again. Or just like if somebody's had a medical surgery, like sometimes they have their stomach or their abdomen cut open, or they have a knee surgery or something. And then they will say, after this, I don't want any more surgeries in my life. But then what happens when the situation presents itself? Sometimes they give in, they succumb to it. So like that, Srila Prabhupada is saying that when a living entity is put into this hellish condition of life and prays to the Lord that he will never again commit sinful activities and have to be put into the womb for repeated birth and death. So this is what the human soul is saying. When he is in that frightful condition, the child is now, they're sitting like that with the hands folded, and then the child is praying that I don't want to be put in this situation ever again. I don't want to enter the womb of another mother. I just want to come out of this situation. And the child from the heart is sincerely praying to Krishna to go back to him. So here in this verse, we also see Srila Prabhupada explains that once the living entity is out of the womb, what happens? They begin to commit the same sinful activities again and again. So that is the biggest catch. Now, why do they keep doing that again and again? Even though someone doesn't want to commit a sin, still they are impelled. So what does Bhagavad Gita say? What does Shri Krishna explain to us? Now Arjuna is asking this question to Shri Krishna. By what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So when Arjuna asks this very important question in such a difficult situation, when he's just about to go into the war, and then when Shri Krishna is speaking about Karma Yoga, he asks about this question. And there Shri Krishna explains that it is lust. So lust is the reason that pushes one to commit sins over and over again. So Shri Krishna says, Karma kama esha krodha esha rajo guna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma vidyenam iha vairinam. It is the Supreme Personality of Godhead said It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So here Srila Prabhupada explains that when our love for Krishna, when that comes into contact with the mode of passion, it gets converted into lust. So when lust is not fulfilled, what happens? A person develops wrath or anger. And when lust is fulfilled, a person becomes proud. Oh, I've got everything. And then when a person is proud, then that leads to greed, because the person wants more and more and more of that. Their lust is never satiated. It is never full, they don't feel complete. And then when they want greed and when they want more and more, and then that leads to illusion. Then they are just mad completely. So here Srila Prabhupada explains that instead of, when this eternal love for Krishna, when it touches the mode of passion, it gets converted to lust. But when instead of the mode of passion, if we develop the mode of goodness, then what happens? We begin to revive our relationship with Krishna on the platform of prema, that is pure love. So in the next verse, Shri Krishna says that Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhisthana muchyate etair vimohyatyesha jnanam avritya dehinam. So the senses, the mind and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the soul. So when we understand that lust resides, where does lust sit? Whereas, all this desire for sense enjoyment, where does it sit? In one's mind, in our senses, and in our intelligence. So therefore, when one purifies one's intelligence, so when we spiritualize our intelligence, and with that spiritual strength, when we engage our mind and senses in the service of the Lord, then one is able to conquer lust. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada says that if by intelligence, when one engages one's mind in Krishna consciousness by complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically the mind becomes stronger. Then even though the senses are very strong like serpents, they will be no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. So, with spiritual intelligence, when we try to strengthen our mind by following the process of bhakti, then what happens? Lust cannot conquer us. But instead, a person can conquer lust and he can develop love for Krishna. So now we see that the human soul within the womb of the mother, after many, many lifetimes, so it is said that if that soul is fortunate, the soul even remembers 100 births before. So after all that, and then in this frightful, difficult situation, the human soul is now offering beautiful prayers to Sri Krishna to take complete shelter of his lotus feet. So the human soul is praying, Tasyopasannamavitum jagadichayata Nanatanor charanarabindam Soham brajami sharanam yakutopayam me Yene drishi gatiradashya satonurupa. So here in this verse we see the beautiful theme of taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. So the human soul, after so much of pain that the soul has gone through within the womb, now in that condition, in that helpless condition, the human soul is offering this prayer. So we can imagine, when we are put into any difficult situation and when we have no other way, and then we realize that Krishna is our ultimate shelter, and then we cry out to him. So just like how Draupadi, she just put her hands out and she started calling out to Sri Govinda. And then Gajendra, when he was caught by the crocodile, he just cried out to the Supreme Lord. So like that, in this verse we see a very beautiful point of taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, and also a beautiful description of whom we are taking shelter. The Lord who takes different forms and walks on this world, anywhere in this universe, by his own sweet will. So Sri Krishna appears with his own sweet will, Ichchaya, by his wish. Now, living entities, we are subjected to our previous karmas. And then when the Lord desires, either we go back to Krishna by purifying our life, or we take birth again. So we don't have control over our birth or death, what happens to us. But Sri Krishna appears through his own sweet will. So that is described here. And then the human soul says, from such a Lord, who is Sri Krishna, who can give me relief from all fear, to him I surrender. So here we see that the child within the womb is now recognizing his impious activities from the past. And then the child is regretting his actions, repenting, and then the child is ready to reform. So in this situation, the child is offering the prayer. And here, now seeing that the child is taking complete shelter, that is Sharanagati. So we'll try to reflect a little bit on aspects of surrender and then the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, and then we will see what we can learn. So when we speak about surrender or Sharanam, there are three aspects. That is Sharan, which is taking or giving shelter. Then Sharanyam, that is whom are we surrendering unto. And then Sharanagati is the process of surrendering. So for us as practicing devotees, as someone who is on the spiritual path, this process of Sharanagati begins by first surrendering to the Guru. By taking shelter from a spiritual master. So initially it begins with surrendering to the instructions of our Shiksha Gurus who are teaching us, who are guiding us on the path, and then with other devotees from whom we can take guidance. And then when one is ready to take initiation from a spiritual master, when they take guidance from the Guru and when they try to follow the instructions, then that is the starting point of this process of Sharanagati, of how to surrender to the Supreme Lord. Because without the guidance, without knowing how to surrender, we will be lost. So we need to know what is the process, what is to be followed. So that is where we need to surrender to the Guru and take guidance from the devotees who are also surrendering and guiding and helping us. So there are 6 characteristics of this process of surrender, which is said in Hari Bhakti Vilasa by Sanatan Goswami. Anukulyasya sankalpaha pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso goptritve varanam tata atmanikshepa karpanye Shadvidha Sharanagatihi. So Anukulyasya Sankalpaha means to make a firm resolve, that is to be determined to accept whatever is favorable for Krishna, whatever is favorable for us to practice bhakti. We accept. So that is Anukulyasya Sankalpaha. Then Pratikulyasya Varchanam, which means to give up those things that are not favorable for our path of bhakti. Things that are not favorable for us to serve Krishna. So we can analyze in our life, what are the things that are helping us to go closer to Krishna. Then we accept. If something is taking us away from Krishna, then we try to reject that. Then, Rakshishyatiti Vishvaso. So have a strong faith that Krishna will protect me, no matter what happens. Krishna is there. He is Gatir Bharta, Prabhu Sakshi, Nivasam Sharanam Sukrut, Prabhava Pranaya Sthanam, Nidanam Bijam Abhyayam. So Krishna is our best friend. He is our Sukrut. He is there. He is guiding us. He is protecting. So to have that faith on the Lord, that is also a very important point of surrender. Rakshishyatiti Vishvaso. Then Goptritve Varanam Tatha. Krishna is my maintainer. He is providing everything for me. So just as a calf, the calf goes to the mother cow. And the cow is looked after by the master. The master who maintains the cows. He gives them grass. He carefully cares for the cow. Like that, now the cow is not worried. Where do I have to go and look for grass? The cow is carefully sheltered under the protection of the master. Like that, we have to have that faith that I don't need anything. Krishna is maintaining me. He is looking after me. So he gives the association of devotees who can care for us, who can love us, who can protect us. And that way, Krishna is also helping us to serve him more through all that. So that is Rakshishyatiti Vishvaso. That is Goptritve Varanam Tata. Then Atmanikshepa means that I am completely dependent on the Lord. So whatever desires I have, it doesn't matter. but I simply run to Krishna. And Krishna knows what is best for me. According to that, he will fulfill. So that is Atma Nikshepe. And if something is not fulfilled, then it means that one needs more purification. Then Karpanye means to always be humble. So one has to develop this quality of humility. So that is again one of the basic qualities required for this process of Sharanagati. Because when one becomes humble, then one is ready to follow the instructions of the Guru. One is ready to follow the instructions of devotees who are guiding them. So that is Karpani. And these are the 6 characteristics of surrender. So, taking the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. So in the next few minutes, we try to meditate on the lotus feet of Shri Krishna. How different devotees took shelter. Now also in this verse, we saw Chala Charanara Vindam. That is the Lord who appeared on this earth and he walked. So Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, now they all walked on the earth. Now Lord Krishna takes various different forms. He is taken Matsyavatara, the form of a fish. Lord Nrsimhadev, half man, half lion. Varahadev, like a boar. And then he takes the form of a tortoise. Now in all these forms, he is not walking on the earth. Whereas Shri Krishna is walking on the earth with his 2 lotus feet. And therefore, the human soul is praying here, I am taking shelter of that Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. And then of course it's cyclic, and it is this Krishna who is taking these different forms as well. So it is both ways, but then when we take shelter, we don't directly say I'm taking shelter of the Matsyavatara. We take shelter of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, who then expands himself into various different forms according to his sweet will. So when Shri Krishna, just before his appearance, when he transforms himself out of his own sweet will, Ichchaya, from the mind of Vasudeva to the heart of Devaki, and then he enters the womb of Mother Devaki. At that time, the demigods, they offer beautiful prayers to welcome Krishna onto this earth. So the demigods say, Dishtya harisya bhavata pado bhuvo bharo panitas tava janmane shithu Dishtyankitam tvat padakaish shobhanair drakshyamagam chatavanukam. O Lord, we are fortunate because the heavy burden of the demons upon this earth is immediately removed by your appearance. Indeed, we are certainly fortunate, for we shall be able to see upon this earth and in the heavenly planets the marks of lotus, conch shell, club and disc that adorn your lotus feet. So the demigods are saying that we are so fortunate because when you appear, Shri Krishna, and when you start walking on this earth, we can see the footprints. We can see all the symbols that are there on the lotus feet of Shri Krishna. That is the conch shell, club, discus, and it is said that there are many different symbols on the lotus feet of Krishna. So it is said that when Akrura, when he went to Vrindavana to take Krishna and Balram from Vrindavana, to Kamsa, when he went to Vrindavana, as soon as he stepped out from the chariot, he started rolling on the sand. Why? Because Krishna has walked on that sand. Krishna's lotus feet has touched that sand there. And the footprints, the marks are there. So Akrura he started rolling. And he felt that, I'm so fortunate that I'm able to get the dust from the lotus feet of Shri Krishna. And that is what even the gopis feel. They take that dust from the lotus feet of Krishna and they put it on their head. Renur, it is said. But then what does Krishna want? He wants the dust from his dear gopis. So that is the beautiful exchange that is happening between Krishna and his devotees. So when Shri Krishna, when he transferred himself into the womb of Mother Devaki, and then everything aligned according to the sweet will of Krishna. That is Ichchaya, which is what we saw in today's verse. So by his own sweet will, by Shri Krishna's will, what happened? The stars aligned. Rohini Nakshatra was there, and then the clouds were thundering mildly. The ocean was very calm. Everyone was peaceful. The Gandharvas and the Kinnaras, they were all chanting, singing and dancing. And then the plants were all full of flowers. Everything was in such a favorable mood. Everything was so conducive for Shri Krishna to appear on this earth. And then we see this beautiful verse that describes how Shri Krishna, in the darkness of night, like the full moon rising on the eastern horizon, he appeared like the sun that is brilliantly shining and dispelling the darkness. Momachur munayo deva somanam simudanvitaha mandam mandam jaladhara jagajuranusagaram nishite tama udbhute jaya mane janardane devakyam devarupinyam Vishnu sarva guhashayaha avirashidyatta prachayam Disinduriva pushkalaha. So Shri Krishna, out of his own sweet will, he appeared. How did he appear? Holding the Shankha, Chakra, Gada and Padma in his hands. And he appeared in his Vishnu form with curly locks of hair, with beautiful lotus petal-like eyes, and with a shining helmet. When Shri Krishna appeared, Vasudeva was completely bewildered seeing Shri Krishna like in that form. But then from his mind, he offered 10,000 cows in charity, just from his mind. So Shri Krishna's appearance on this earth, something like this, is something that we cannot understand simply from our mundane vision. So when we see this through the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then when we try to realize that this Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, he walks on planet Earth with his lotus feet, he performs different pastimes, He has his own sweet will. When we try to go through the Shastras, then when we take that humble mode, then our process of Sharanagati begins. So that is where this human soul, after so many lifetimes, when it has understood the supremacy of Sri Krishna, the human soul within the womb of the mother now is beginning to offer prayers to Krishna, starting by taking shelter of his lotus feet. So similarly, let us also pray that we will always take shelter from the lotus feet of Krishna. Let us surrender unto Shri Radha Gopinath and pray that we will always serve him, always be under his loving protection and guidance. So we will just end with this little song that where Rupa Goswami is praying. Rupa Goswami is offering this prayer which was offered by Lord Brahma. So here it is said, O Lord Sri Krishna, I am offering a prayer unto you. Please let the bee of my mind be offered the nectarian honey of your lotus feet. Because that is what we are trying to get to. When we take our mind to the lotus feet of Krishna, and when our mind is absorbed in drinking the honey from the lotus feet of Krishna, then we know that we are situated in the right place. Krishna Deva Bhavantam Vande, Krishna Deva Bhavantam Vande, Mana Manasa Madhu Karamarpayani cha Pada Pankaja Makarande, Yadyapi Samadhishu Vidirapi Pashyati Natavana Kagramarichim, Idam Ichchami Nishamya Tavachuta Tadapi Kripat Bhuta Vichim, Krishna Deva Bhavantam Vande, Krishna Deva Bhavantam Vande. Jai Granthrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhuji.
If the child is fortunate, he can remember all the times of his past 100 births. So my question is, if the child is very fortunate, how did he even enter into a mother's womb? Alright, he entered into the mother's womb. What does the Garbhadhana Samskara do? And are devotees exempted from the 9 months of hellish conditions in a mother's womb?
Now, the hellish condition is something that every living entity goes through. It is not whether they are devotees or whether they are not devotees, because that is just the process that a living entity has to go through. Now, that is scientific, that is Krishna's way of creation. That is the way Krishna has set up the process of creation. Now, for example, we can compare it with something like this. Now, let's say this child is here, and if he wants to play with a dough, with some clay. Now, his ultimate aim is he wants to make a beautiful pot. But to make that beautiful pot, he has to take the clay and then he has to crush it, he has to mold it, he has to squeeze it. He does all that, then he rolls it. He does everything, and then that clay becomes a beautiful pot. Like that, this situation, this hellish condition that a living entity is put through it is the mercy of Krishna for us to realize that we have to revive our relationship back with Him and that we have to go back to Him. So when we go back, earlier in Canto 3, when we saw the process of creation, we saw how at every step when the false ego is added, then that is putting us through different difficult situations. So at each layer, when we try to remove the false ego, then we are trying to revive our relationship back with Krishna. So the Garbhadana Samskara, it is a process of purification. So say when a devotee is going to be born, now even that devotee within the womb, he or she does go through that difficult situation. But that human soul sees it as a mercy from the Lord. And then when that soul comes out, when we see devotee kids, for example, here's this lovely little child. At his age, I don't know if he's 2, 3 years or 4 years old, he's wearing a tilak, and he is born to devotees. Now this child, in the womb, they go through the same condition, but as soon as the child comes out of the womb, the child is ready to take on to the path of bhakti. So these children, they are very blessed. From the stage they are born, we see some devotees bringing their newborn babies, and they place them and, and they take them. So like that, those children, they have started their bhakti, they have started their sharanagati straight from the womb of the mother and continuing. Because such a mother, a devotee mother, even listens to kirtans, they chant, they pray, they are constantly surrounded by devotees. So all this gives such a conducive atmosphere that when such a child comes out of the womb, the child takes to bhakti immediately. So their process of going back to Krishna is guaranteed and it is instant. Now for many of us who have taken to the path of bhakti later in life, still Srila Prabhupada gives us the assurance that at any stage when one surrenders and take to the path of bhakti, one has the hope of going back to Krishna and to never come back. But again, in all of this, what is involved is our humility. That is what we saw, that is the starting point of surrender, as we are seeing in these verses. I hope that answers.
I totally understand that. But my question is more referring to the before the birth, during those 9 months, especially from 7th month to 9th month.
Yeah.
So does the child, unborn child, still has to go through inspired of being a devotee?
Every human soul has to go through that, because that soul is covered by the material ingredients, isn't it? So the material ingredients, when there is a covering, when there are intestines around, so that is just the physical condition of it. That is the physical condition that the child is put under, that the human soul is put under. Now, for example, let's expand it outside. We see the sun's heat. Now, summer, okay? Now, do we say that, oh, because we are devotees, summer doesn't touch us? No. We do feel the heat. We are subjected to that difficult situation of tolerating the scorching heat. When it's winter, do devotees don't feel the chillness of the winter? Devotees feel it. But then our response to it changes. Devotees begin to tolerate any situation. So even though if it's a devotee child within the womb of a mother, physically that child is definitely in a difficult situation, which is what we have been hearing in all of these verses. The Apana Vayu is pushing the child down, and then there is worms, there's smell, there's everything. That is all just the physicalities of it. But internally, that human soul is still free. That human soul is not touched, given if it's a devotee child who's going to appear. That child is not affected by all this. But then when the child comes out, then the process of surrender begins. But the physicalities of it is the same for everyone. But then we see the sunlight as Krishna. We don't see the sunlight as, oh, this is just extremely hot. We see the moon as Krishna. We see the wind as Krishna. So even that, the mother's womb, it is like a sheltering house for the child that is going to appear. For anyone. So when a woman is pregnant, she looks after the baby so carefully. Why? Because they want to give that loving environment for the child who's going to come out. So naturally the physical difficulties will be there, but then the soul is not touched by these difficulties, given if it's a devotee child who is fortunate and who remembers everything from the past and all that.
Bottom line is the devotee, if it's like a devotee child or a fallen yogi, an aristocrat in the previous life, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, they do not undergo these tribulations in the mother's womb from 7th month onwards.
Prabhuji, I just mentioned that all of them go through that. All of them go through the difficult situation. It is just that those are the physical conditions of the troubles. Whether one is an aristocrat, one is a devotee, one is a man, one is a woman, one is whoever, no matter what. The difficulties that we experience later in life, preceding to that, we are experiencing that difficulty within the womb as well. But then the human soul is not touched by it when it is a devotee. So I think we have to see it from a very spiritual perspective, because when we try to understand it from our mundane vision, it might be very difficult to understand.
We won't make much progress.
Concepts.
I was also